Hi everybody, my name is Cindy Krum, and I just got back from the amazing 2023 Barbados SEO conference where I gave a presentation called Word to Your Mom, Managing the Future of SEO Without Keywords, and it was a lot of fun and got a lot of good feedback, so I thought I'd record it and put it online for more people to see. If you're not familiar with my work, I have been doing SEO for a very long time, since about 2003, focusing on mobile SEO and technical SEO, international SEO, and helping big companies solve big SEO problems for websites and apps. I've written a book. Last year I was named one of the top 10 most influential SEO experts by USA Today. So I've been doing this for a while and I do know some stuff. In the time that I've been doing SEO, I've gotten kind of a reputation for being a bit of a Google whisperer, being able to predict what Google's going to do and kind of interpret their moves so that SEOs can better prepare and companies can better prepare for what the future of Google might look like. When I wrote this talk, it was very last minute because I had prepared a different talk for the conference, and Google made an announcement the day before I spoke, and I decided to totally redo my talk to position some of the announcements that they made. So forgive me for all of the hot takes. That's mostly what this presentation is, but keep in mind that a lot of my hot takes have historically been right, or at least been close. So that's perhaps good news. So this is the official cover slide for my talk. Very nice. This is the unofficial cover slide for my talk with this little tattoo heart that says Mom, and of course, you know, Mom can be very exciting, especially when we're talking about a future of SEO without keywords. And it can be surprising how much some people love AI language models. So this is kind of the inspiration. I love Mom and AI language models, but it can also then be surprising how much some people love middle school comebacks, kind of lame middle school comebacks, and would be willing to get those tattooed. That's funny. But before we get into things too much, I have to give you a bit of a trigger warning. This talk definitely includes some triggers, especially for SEOs. It may include mentions of known triggers, including mobile SEO, voice search, micromoments, entities, and of course, the false inspiration for this talk, Vanilla Ice, who brought us the term or the phrase Word to Your Mother. And in case anyone's concerned that there will be actual rapping in this talk, I can assuage those concerns. There won't be any rapping from me in this talk. I don't want anything like that ever floating around on the internet. But with all that introduction, let's get into it. There's been a lot of stuff changing with Google recently, and so my goal with this talk is to kind of bring it all together into a meaningful storyline. And you'll kind of see how my brain works and how I do that. Essentially, I pay a lot of attention to all of the news and happenings in SEO, both coming out of Google and from the SEO community, and I put those ideas together in my head and let them bang around until they form a story. And I think in this case I do have a pretty good story to tell you. And so this is a sneak preview of what I think you're going to get out of the talk and what I think I will be able to prove, or at least posit as an option for the potential future of SEO. So we'll talk about Mom, but before we talk about that, we'll talk about Google's main limitation, which is the cost of processing power, because Mom is all about context, which can come from, in some cases, non-keyword content. Mom serves to add filters and journeys into Google's processing of our queries, and that helps them limit the processing needs in search to get a good result. And what they've just announced the day before I wrote this talk, so middle of last week, was an increased level, kind of a dramatic increased level of personalization, which I think could also help them limit processing needs from search, at least in the long term. It'll probably increase processing needs in the short term, or it potentially could. Now, the backing of this is from the idea that I think Google may be reviving some old concepts, and when they talk about system updates instead of algorithm updates, I think that might be meaningful. I think systems help limit processing needs for any algorithms, right? So if you push things through different systems, they may need less algorithmic evaluation, which eases up their processing power that Google requires to get a good result. So this, when Google talks about system updates, it may be slightly different, or could be interpreted differently than an algorithm update. In my mind, algorithms, have scores, and systems are more of like a sorting process or a filtering process. Traditional SEO, in my mind, focuses really only on one or maybe two of the possible systems, and it focused most heavily on one of them, and that's information. Others that I'll show you, which are all connected by the topic layer in MUM, but are, I think, part of different systems, include offline location kinds of queries, products and purchases, and then media and personal offline stuff, IoT stuff. And I think that EEAT and YMYL are also different kinds of filters that help Google limit processing and prevent pollution of SGE and other AI. They're helping validate things. So I don't expect you to understand or believe all of that or any of that right now. That's what the talk is designed to show. So with that in mind, let's talk about Google as a whole. When I'm thinking about what Google's trying to do with updates, I usually start with Google income statements and stuff like that, to see where are they focusing their investment and where are their costs, because just like all of us, Google is a business, and so they need to maximize their opportunities and revenue while minimizing or decreasing their cost of revenue. And for Google, the cost of revenue, the main cost of revenue, is processing overhead and the compute requirements for queries, the many millions and millions of queries that they do around the world every single day. So that's where MUM comes in. And if you haven't heard of it, I've talked about it a lot in the past couple of years, but MUM stands for Multitask Unified Model. And I think a lot of people have written it off as something cool or just another language model, but I actually believe that it is quite fundamental, or at least will be, to Google's vision and execution of future states of search. So here's Google's announcement, just the top of the write-up. But what I want you to notice is the imagery where they show photos, videos, fact cards, translations, maps, and all different kinds of information. And the way Google describes MUM is they say it's about connecting keywords into journeys. And they say a keyword doesn't just have one journey, it can have many journeys. And so when they're looking and using MUM, they're trying to figure out what journey are you on, what path are you on. So in this example, they talk about hiking Mount Fuji. And if you're actually hiking Mount Fuji, there are things you might want to do. You might want to book a hotel or a flight. You might want to buy hiking boots or gear. But if you're just doing a research project on Mount Fuji, then you might want more factual stuff. You might want height and climate and things that would go in a research paper. And so once Google identifies what journey you're on, they believe that they'll do a better job of serving the right search results for you. And my belief, and Google kind of indicates this in their write-up too, is that these journeys are based around Google's understanding of an entity. And it's become funny because I have been using this slide for many, many years, but I think it is still useful or meaningful to at least understand how I believe things are, which is to say that I believe when Google launched mobile first indexing back in 2017, they called it mobile first indexing for a reason. They talked about it being about crawling, but I think that it was really about them reorganizing their index or their understanding of the world to be around entities rather than to be around language specific concepts. Now, the difference between an entity and a language-specific concept like a keyword is that entities are language agnostic. Entities are part of the topic layer and they happen before language. And the way I've always explained this is entities tend to have the same links to other entities regardless of what language you're speaking. And so we can actually map entities to their translations because they have the same linkages. So for instance, mother is related to father, is related to daughter, is related to grandfather, is related to grandmother, all in the same way, regardless of if I say mother in English or Japanese or French. And so that's how we get away from this obsession that SEOs have always had with keywords, and we allow things to have kind of a larger appeal. And one of the things that you might have noticed when Google was transitioning to mobile first indexing is they did have a lot of international and translation announcements. Like they announced things about an international index. They announced translation of the title tags of images and all this stuff where you can see they were trying to fill in the blanks in the topic layer in different languages. And what this has meant for SEOs is a huge build out of the knowledge graph as Google fills in the blanks where, they started by learning a lot of things really well in English, and then they kind of cross apply and check that those things still apply in languages where they don't have as much data or they're just not as good. Things like German where they combine words and that's harder, or things like script languages, maybe even smaller script languages, or just small languages in general where they don't have as much data volume to do the quality assurance and processing to learn the languages as quickly, right? Because that's how Google's learning languages and understanding things is based on their interactions with those languages. So, mum comes to us because entity first indexing, and actually, what Google called mobile first indexing, launched. And that's why we've seen this massive build out of the knowledge graphs, and just in general, Google understanding entities better, which makes the search results more googly, full of things like people also ask, and all these new carousels and filters and kind of info boxes and all this new stuff. So that's mobile first indexing made that possible. Now, on a related but different note, at about the same time that Google announced Mum, they also announced something called Multisearch. And this is kind of an image of it, but basically you can submit through Google Lens a picture of something, and that had already existed, Google Lens, but you submit a picture of something with a modifier, like in this example, they have a picture of an orange dress, but we say this but in green, and Google is taking the keyword and using the image together. So the keyword modifies the image, and that gets us green dresses that look like the orange dress. Now realize here that without the image, the keyword in green would definitely not get us the results that we're seeking. And optimizing for in green would not do us too much good here unless we also had good image recognition on our product images. So I think that's kind of a future kind of thing that Google is aspiring to do that as SEOs we're going to have to be ready for. This is part of their announcement where they show you the path of what that might look like. They do talk about it a lot in shopping, but it's not just for shopping. They also talk about it just for regular queries, video queries even. This one, which is one I would use a lot, is like if you're trying to fix something but you don't know what it's called, you just submit a picture of it and you say how to fix. Again, how to fix would not surface the correct video, but with the image and the query together, you're able to get enough context to get a good answer from Google. And so that kind of gives us an idea, I think, of where Google wants to go. And I do think that that's very much related to MOM and this additional context that they're trying to achieve with it. Now let's look for a second at new SERPs. New search results have a lot of new filters in them that Google is adding in, and not every search result has the same filters. They're different, and in fact sometimes there are a lot of them. So if I search for cat breeds, we get images, which is in most search results, but then we get with photos, short-haired, long-haired, indoor, large, female, chart, alphabetical, and then we get more filters. Overview, breeds, sound, videos, care, and then we get these pictures of breeds, but this is just more filters. It's skipping the breeds button and letting you click on a filter directly for one of those top breeds. And of course we get some about info, so they show like, hey, we know what this is. And this is happening for other things too, services like flights and airlines. You can search for United Airlines, and they're trying to make even the knowledge graph smarter by adding some things that they can lift from the website directly into a search result, like the ability to track flights. But they're also kind of understanding what are common things that people search for. They search for the ability to check in. They search for a flight status. They search for a login page or baggage fees. Maybe they're on a stock journey and they search for that. Same thing here, but this is for American Airlines. With American Airlines, if you search for customer care, they surface a chat feature that opens directly in the search results. So Google is doing a good job here of helping out American Airlines, where people don't even have to get to the website or know what it is, to have a good experience with their customer service people. And this plays out, of course, on mobile too, and we have things like explore boxes where they're really going for it and they're saying, we know a whole lot about this topic. And putting these filters in just about everywhere to try and make a better experience. But what my belief is that these filters, Google can kind of pre-process, and if they encourage you to jump in a funnel created by one of these filters and they have that kind of path already planned out, then they don't have to work as hard as they would if you're just submitting a brand new query. Like, what if you use like 7 or 10 words to describe what you want? That's a lot of new processing. Maybe it's a query they've never seen and all you really wanted was the lifespan of the average Persian cat. With the filters, they can kind of pre-program that, and it takes way less processing power to get you the answer. They've pre-processed it. They've got the funnel and the plan for roughly what you're going to see. But if they have to start from scratch every single time, that is a lot of work for them. Now, this could be great for users. Users seem to love it. They don't seem to mind for the most part, but website owners don't always like it, because what's happening with search results like that is, even though rankings and top rankings are going up and up and up and we're doing what we're supposed to do, traffic's going down. So how do we win here? How do we continue, doing what we're supposed to do, driving rankings up without losing traffic for some of these queries? And I'm not sure, there's not a solid answer for that. We're just going to kind of have to wait and play along with it. But some of those queries, like the cat breed queries, if you used to rank there and you don't anymore, that may never come back. You may have to target different keywords or have different strategies for some of those big generic entity kind of keywords that Google really understands well. So let's think about the processing costs a bit more. By knowing the different journeys that you might take, Google can add in the right filters for you to prevent them from having to process a really complicated kind of nonsense query that you put in to try and get what you want. If they really understand these journeys, they can help you along the way. And remember that like not every query that someone submits deserves or requires the same amount of processing power. Enough people search for some queries like grumpy cat that like we don't have to rethink that every time. Let's just show this like nice looking Google Explorer result, and that might answer most of the questions that people have. Same thing they used to do with featured snippets and knowledge graph. So people feel satisfied immediately without even having to click. They think it's a good result. But the other good thing that happens with these filters is we're decreasing processing power, but notice every time you click a filter, you're getting a whole new search result, and that's giving Google the opportunity to show more ads that are more specific to that new filtered query. And so they get more search volume, more ability to show query volume and ads, and more potential that you might just find an ad that answers your question and click on that. So it helps them do what they're trying to do and sell ads. But the other thing to know here is that the filters are changing as you add them up. So for instance, if we start with grumpy cat and then we click on lifespan here, then we get a new set of filters and it shows the filter. You've clicked on lifespan, then you click on male, and it goes to another one, and it goes male lifespan grumpy cat, and then you can click on female and really confuse it, and you've got male and female in the filters, but they don't care. They've figured that out. They know people are weird. They do stuff like that, and then you can go off into the wild blue yonder, so to speak, and click on blue, which I don't even know why there's a blue grumpy cat lifespan query, but it exists. Google's seen it enough before that they've mapped it out here in this list of potential journeys. And if you don't know, Google is already tracking people's journeys and reporting back to you on your personal journeys. And if you look for it in your Chrome history, they're getting it from Chrome, but also other Google properties. And what I can tell you is that this is what it looks like now, but it used to be a lot richer of an experience because Google was including more queries from all of their different search properties. So they were including queries if you queried in YouTube, if you queried in Google Play, and I think even if you queried in your Gmail, they were clustering those things together. Now, I think that creeped too many people out, so they've backed it off, and they're just showing web clicks and queries and journeys that way. But most recently, what they've started doing is even adding filters into your Journeys tab, so they can start you or restart your journey with some more filters. And this is them saying, hey, this is the journey we think you're on. And here is what a lot of people search for next. Do you want to just go with one of these options? Because that's what lots of people were searching for and wanting. So again, they're saving themselves processing power here. Now, I tend to believe, number one, that the filters save processing powers, but that basically filters get us to journeys, and that really gets us to conversations. And I don't think it's an accident that what we're talking about with SGE and a lot of the new AI tools is called conversational AI. That is what a lot of tools have been trying to do for a long time. And it kind of blows my mind that everyone thinks that these conversations and these conversational AIs are going to be all about typing, because they're not. That's not what people are trying to do. Everyone wants to tap into the power of voice. It's just that it's difficult. And that's another reason that more context is often needed. So let's talk for a minute about Voice Discover and AI assistants. Now, if you've played around with the new Google AI tools, you might have played with Bard. And what I want you to notice in Bard is that there's a speaker built in. It's right there. They are meaning for this to be spoken out loud. They're meaning for it to be a conversation. They're starting it with typing because they don't want to freak people out, and they know typing is what people are used to. But I think that this is a clear sign of where they're going. So I don't think that these conversational AIs are going to be typed forever. I think there's a lot that's going to be spoken, and writing it off as stupid voice search is just kind of wrong and short-sighted. Yes, it's taken a while for voice search to work, and that's because it's hard and they needed more context, and this is where we are. But also look at the history of what Google has done to try and get more context. We know they've been working on things like voice and predictive search and conversational search since Google started talking about conversational search in the predecessor to the Google Now launch, when they were talking about, I remember, I think Matt Cutts and Danny Sullivan talking about queries like how tall is, or where is the Eiffel Tower, and the response was in France, and then the next query was how tall is it? And they gave you how tall it was. That was the beginning, in probably 2016, that Google was talking about conversational search. And then they started launching things like Speakable Schema, which most people have heard about, how to FAQ Q&A schema, but they don't realize that the heading in schema.org and with Google always has been Speakable Schema. And so Google's been trying to do this for a long time, and so I think that these conversations and these journeys are going to be used to link on and offline behavior, so Google gets even more context about the journey that you're on. Now, the other thing to look at in Bard and in SGE is the number one setting that you can control at the very top is language. They give you the option to set your language and region, and they let you turn on or off these spoken answers on desktop. So I think this just shows kind of where their head is at and what they need, or what they think they need to do a good job. But the other thing is, if you haven't been looking at things happening on the Google Home Hubs and Google Nest Hubs, whatever they call it now, these are very much the conversational search that they've been striving for, and they're using all of the things like people also ask and found on the web, but also the Explore stuff and some of the Discover stuff and the filters to have a good experience where you don't necessarily have to type. And one of the big announcements that came out of Google I/O that I don't think got enough attention was that Google's new tablets, I think it's the Pixel tablet, comes with a docking station to charge it, and whenever you set it down to dock and charge, it becomes a Google Nest Hub. So they're cleverly and sneakily trying to get the users who are using these tablets as their TV, their game system, and their home controls, and their search function, and their kitchen timers, and their music players, and their weather stations, and their alarms, to really start engaging here. And it is a pretty decent experience a lot of the time. So if you haven't played with one of those recently, I suggest you do. But they're also adding in these things specifically for things that people use those home hubs for a lot, like cooking, and so you can see the journeys here to help people interact in the online, offline kind of digital space. So let's talk about the announcement that happened the day before I did this speech. Google said that there are new ways to find just what you need on search. And what I want to call your attention to here, this is the top of the article, is that it was just, I presented on the 16th, so it was just the day before. I don't even think it was early morning. I think it was probably about 1 p.m. In Barbados time. But the other thing I want you to see is this is by Kathy Edwards, who is the VP/General Manager of Search. So not nobody, right? Important people are getting up and talking about this. So let me read you kind of one of the quotes that I thought was really important. She said, "Today we're introducing some improvements to help you find information that's most helpful just for you, no matter how unique or individual your question." So this speaks to personalization, something that Google has not wanted to talk too much about for a long time. They've been willing to do like hyper localization down to like your house, but they don't want to talk about personalization because it freaks people out. But I think it's an important concept for Google, and it's important for all this context stuff. And so we've known for a while, like Google has been building out these entity graph, these entity relationships, but they have also been quietly building out personal entity indexing. And it started with things like Google Plus, and the login for Google, right? When they started to know all of your different things. But I think they're really trying to understand who you are so they can surface what you want. And so the announcements included things like the ability to favorite things, the ability to leave notes on specific results, and that when you click on a result often, it's going to start to rank better for you. So in this case, I think this shows that Google has been really building out this personal entity indexing, and that you are an entity. But what I want to kind of add in is with all of the Nest Home hubs and Nest cams and doorbells and things like that, part of your entity understanding is also your locations and your devices, so that Google can disambiguate. Like, let's say you're a person who has, amazingly 2 homes. Like, that sounds great. So if you say turn on the patio lights, it has to know, like, okay, you have 2 homes, but only one has patio lights. Or if you have 2 homes and they both have patio lights, then they need to ask and say, do you want us to turn on the patio lights at this house or this house? And that's just going to be another filter, right? That's part of the filtering. And like I said, this isn't new. Bill Sawatsky was writing about this back in 2020 and even before then, and obviously had some amazing things and broke down some patents and how some of this stuff might all come together. So it is it's a holy grail that Google's been chasing for a long time, and SEOs like to make fun of it because I think the personalization is necessary for voice, and Google denies it, but Google, recent news has showed us that stuff that Google denies was happening. And so, Google said, oh, well, we're not doing any personalization. Well, maybe they weren't, but they were probably still collecting the data and building their entity understanding for the personal entity, even if they weren't adjusting search results for it. So sometimes you have to read between the lines, maybe. Okay, so this is another quote from the announcement. Starting later this year, we'll also make it easier to find and visit your favorite sites. For example, if you've searched for something a few times and keep returning to the same web page, our system will recognize that and bring the site to the top of search results page. As always, you can see blah, blah, blah. You can check on your personalization. Now, what I want you to know here is that number one, lots of people stay logged into Google all the time. Number two, Google is actually making it harder to be logged out of Google in many of their experiences. So number three, that means that whatever rank tracking software you're using is going to be even more off for some users, because people are going to be getting more personalized results, and they may not even know that they're getting personalized results, that they're logged into Google, and the tools aren't going to rush out and tell everybody, because there's not going to be a lot that they can do about this. So this is a win for Google, because making it harder for SEOs to track rankings and for SEO tools to make money tracking rankings is a win for Google, because it makes it easier for Google to live a life of peace without SEOs going in and messing things up right away when they make changes. There's this risk that these non-standard rankings will even further hobble or fully kill rank tracking, which I think has been quite deceptive for a long time. What does position 1 mean anymore if you're below a huge knowledge graph, or like on that grumpy cat result? There's just a lot that being number 1 in a search result doesn't tell you about what's above you, what's below you, how many ads are there, and how well has Google monetized it, how many filters are there, stuff like that. So these journeys are getting us to this super personalization place, which might make Google have an easier time serving good results and potentially serving ads to the right people, right? Because if they can take all these journeys in, anonymize them, and use them for modeling in GA4, and use them for modeling in all of the automated ad serving that they're forcing people to do now, then that's a win-win-win for Google. They can anonymize the data, pump it into all the things that they know they're helping serve the right ads to the right people. People click on more ads, advertisers are happy, they spend more money, and the journeys don't necessarily take as much processing. Now, I do think that in general, personalizing search results is a heavy lift in terms of processing resources, but only in the beginning. Once Google has started to capture and understand what you want when you're doing a search, they're not going to have to work so hard. They're going to kind of have a sense for when are you doing a deep dive in something and you're really digging down towards, not just the very top of the result. You want, researchy kind of stuff. And when you just kind of want a knowledge graph, and they'll just show you that and they won't process any harder because they know you're going to be happy with that. Or you want a YouTube video and they know you're going to be happy with that. I think there's a lot they can learn, and in the long run, they'll save themselves a lot of processing power by understanding the journey that a user is on and serving the right results. And of course, they make more money with better ads. So the personalized SERPs, the notes and follow, I think, is the holy grail for Google. It's something that they've been trying to work on for a long time. It started with conversational search, which became Google Now. Oh, that's 2012. Wow, that's so long ago. And then the Google Assistant and Google Nest and Allo, and then the Google App in 2016, and then a Google Feed in 2017, and then Google Discover in 2018, and now Google Explore, or part of Explore, which those things are all kind of mixed up and jumbled up, but they're just trying a lot of things here. They all seem to follow a similar thread where they're trying to anticipate your search needs and surface that without you having to search, or surface it with just a quick voice search. It all kind of runs together, but seems like it's all part of the same process. Now, the other thing to know is that there was recently a major update in Google's knowledge graph, and this was reported by Jason Bernard, and he talked about the EEAT in knowledge graph and how personal brand SERPs with a knowledge graph increased from 38% to 50%. So more things have a knowledge graph, like personal entities have a knowledge graph than ever did before, and more of them don't cite Wikipedia or don't use the description from Wikipedia. So again, that seems like Google is trying to build up some kind of personal entity understanding, and perhaps in this case they're trying to understand and make kind of a clear line between what is this person's public persona and what is not. What is their private stuff that shouldn't show up in a knowledge graph, and what should, because that does seem like a major risk that if they start showing too much personal stuff, like if they show everything they know, that's probably too much. So they've got to figure out where that line is. So voice and super personalization is going to be way more processing costs in the short term, but let's jump in and talk about saving on those processing costs, because I think this is another reason that there's an important distinction, potentially, at least in my mind, between system updates and algorithm updates. And again, I'll just preempt this feedback by saying, like, this is a hot take. This is just my interpretation of what I've seen. But I think that system updates filter different kinds of queries so that they can use the right algorithms at the right times, and they don't have to use all the algorithms all the time. So it's to save processing power. So this is just an example model. This isn't anything Google's ever documented, and this could be reversed. We could have this in a different order. Don't know. But if you think about it, let's just say hypothetically that EEAT, so experience, expertise, authority, and trust, is signaling a minimum threshold to be included in any kind of top result, and then helpful content, or the helpful content update system, processes EEAT vetted content. So we don't want it to process too hard, so we don't want it to process everything, so it has to meet a threshold, and then it gets processed to see if it's uniquely useful in adding to the conversation, And then after that, if it is adding to the conversation, then maybe it can be added to any kind of LLM, language learning model that Google is using, like Mom or BERT or any of the other things, especially as long as there's a low your money or your life, a low YMYL risk. And only then can something that's past all those previous 3 thresholds be potentially included in an AI result. Because Google doesn't want something that doesn't have expertise, authority, and trust, and that isn't uniquely adding to the internet to end up in an AI result, right? Because it would pollute the AI potentially, especially when learning is actually really working. Right now, some people are saying that the AI is not really AI, it's machine learning. But if it's learning, we want to make sure it learns the correct things. And perhaps, the things that are getting through that are bad in some of the SGE AI results, maybe they got processed wrong, or they didn't go through the right systems, or they, didn't have enough EEAT but randomly got entered into another system. They hit some threshold. I think there's interesting stuff happening here that we should be watching for and thinking about as we are continuing on our SEO journey. So why is AI important here? Or sorry, why is EEAT important here? I think the content that we create and put on the internet is food for the AI. If we're feeding AI content that's AI generated, right? Like AKA that the helpful content update is trying to, or the helpful content system is trying to weed out. If we're feeding AI content that is AI generated, that does bad things for AI, because basically it creates a filter bubble where it's feeding in bad results to create more bad results. A really detrimental loop. So EEAT, to me, the way I think about it, instead of thinking about it just as a quality signal, I think of it as a humanity signal. Like, I think of it, Google's not going to say this, but because they keep wanting to say that, oh no, we're pro AI. Like, yeah, they're pro AI. You can use AI for ideas, but they really want humans to generate the content, I think. So my belief is that EEAT was an especially good acronym before they added the second E, because like humans eat, but bots don't need to. And so they're filtering for like, we want things that eat. At least that's how I think about it. So Google said, and this is again in their recent release or recent announcement, we've seen in our research that people want peer validation and like to see what others are saying about a given web page. Notes people give are a helpful layer of human insight on each search result, working hand in hand with existing content on the web and making it more useful. What I want you to note in this passage is the word human and people. They're specifically calling out the connection of one person to another, rather than just connecting a person with a standard issue AI result that regurgitates facts that are well known. And then I have a note here, and I say Google may process sentiment from notes to outsource and human identify bad AI content. Like, they may use these notes to train their algorithms, like their helpful content system, to spot bad AI. So like if people leave a note on a result and they say, oh, this result sucks, then Google will say like, oh, tell us more. Why is it bad? Or if people say, oh, this is just useless regurgitation, then they can maybe say, oh, it was maybe AI generated, or more likely not helpful. Or maybe people will call it out and say specifically, this is AI, or this is overly monetized, or it won't load, or whatever it is. I think they're again, as they have many times before, using the especially geeky amongst us, who are SEOs who like to play with the new tools, and just technologists who like to play with them, as a free, unpaid army of people to train their AI system. And when I gave this talk originally, there was a joke saying like it'll only last for a couple months because they only need so much training data. And I think that this might be true. I don't think this notes thing is going to be around forever. And of course, Marty Weintraub came up to me this morning before I gave this talk, that morning, I should say, and said like, notes in search results, what could possibly go wrong? Because again, like, yeah, it seems like it's probably going to get a lot of spam from people too, but you know, possibly SEOs. But the thesis remains true. I think that Google is trying to use things like EEAT and helpful content to prevent AI written content, AI authored content, from feeding its AI system so the snake doesn't eat its tail. So this is the last, I think, quote from them in the article. It says, no matter how specific the topic, there's always almost someone out there looking for information about it, and hopefully there's someone else with knowledge that can help. Search has always been about connecting the vastness of human curiosity with incredible expanse of human wisdom that's found on the web. Again, notice the two uses of human in this this passage, but also, you know, the level of personalization that they're aspiring for seems pretty deep. And I'll tell you, you know, I've always questioned the interpretation that SEOs are using for EEAT. Yes, Google says it's about you know, just a quality signal, but it seemed always to me like it was pushing people towards like influencer marketing results on YouTube, which would kind of make sense because Google monetizes those really well, and so do the influencers, and they can drive sales. But that may be part of this. But here's where I want to bring back that trigger warning that I know some of you have, which is the micromoments, because I tend to believe that Google is still using micromoments, and that the micromoments are actually the systems that Google is talking about when they're talking about system updates. So this is way throwback from something that Google started talking about for mobile SEO, and it was probably back in 2016. And they said the micromoments, the things that people do when they search, especially on mobile, is they say, I want to know, I want to go, I want to buy, I want to do. And what I think is happening is that these are 4 different systems that Google is using to filter people into, where they're trying really hard at the top of a search result to understand, are you trying to learn something? Are you trying to go somewhere? Are you trying to buy something? Or are you trying to do something? And these things play out, interestingly, in different kinds of results that Google can surface. So I want to know is often topic layer and EEAT and YMYL focus in here. So that may mean SGE comes in here later, but it's also things like people also ask knowledge graph. And you'll see this in regular search results, maybe with more personalization, maybe in SGE, and maybe the discover follow stuff will be added here. But this is the information one that I mentioned in the beginning. This is where most of the SEO focuses. But then there's I want to go, which is sending people to maps and local reviews and getting people to interact in an online offline world. So this is Maps, Android Auto, Google My Business / Google My Profile, or Google Business Profile, and that's why they've been making a lot of updates there recently. And then, of course, I want to buy, and this is Merchant Center, which used to be Google Shopping. And, of course, we know that Google Merchant Center just changed from being a paid-only thing to a free and paid option. That happened maybe 2 years ago. So I shouldn't say just, maybe a year and a half ago. But what has happened most recently is all of these shopping grids that are showing up in the search results. For a while, we've had the product listing ads, the PLAs at the top. Those are paid. But now, even in organic, we're getting things that look like PLAs, and they're coming in all over the search result when Google is sure that you want to buy something. So I think this is where the one person peer perspective product knowledge graph is going to come into the search results. So if things are funneled this way, they're going to be processed differently. And then the last one is I want to do. I think this goes towards maybe Google Discover, Google Explore, Google Assistant, but also YouTube. I want to do often seems to be a media query, like I want to watch this show, I want to play this music, I want to cook a souffle. And so that's where we get into like quick answers, maybe the barred chat. We're also getting into IoT, like turning off the porch lights, and media. So if Google can do a great job at filtering queries into these systems, or filtering your query into these systems, then they save a lot on processing power, and they make it easier for you as a searcher, because you don't have to type a really, really, really long thing, or say a really, really, really long thing into the query, and then they don't have to process that and try to like make heads and tails of it. They just can use these kind of filters to make their life easier and give the query more context. So this is my vision of those filters, right? Like it's just like they're organizing everything in a really quick, magical way to pre-sort everything. So looking at a search result that's really broad, right, you can see where this might be useful. So I searched for smart home. What's interesting about this query is that it's very much a topic. It could be a product category, but it's not something you can buy. And so Google's like confused, right? So they're trying really, really hard with all of these filters at the top, 2 rows of filters, and then kind of a knowledge graph where you can expand, and there are probably ways to click in here, and then you can filter over here. They're like, what the heck do you want, guy? So they're really pushing, and I think I used to think that these side filters were when Google really understood a topic, and perhaps that's true, but we might also see them when they really understand a topic, but they don't know what you want with that topic. Like they're really lost about how they can help. So that's my guess. And you can see there's shopping results down here. There's Google Home stuff here, PC Magazine. It's a lot of like, they're throwing stuff at you to go like, which of these things are you interested in? So let's dig into each of these. Quickly, I want to know, this is the information one. It's the one we're most familiar with as SEOs, so I'm going to give you a quick example. I've given this example in other talks, but just to show you, a query in the UK for the word football. Normally it looks like this. You can see BBC's at the top, or BBC Sport anyway, with some indented links, some news results, and a knowledge graph that includes a picture of the ball. For you Americans, this is what a football is in the UK, and then a picture of the sport being played. And if you dig in, it talks about the rules, stuff like that. Now, BBC is ranking #1 for that, like consistently. So their SEO's got to be really happy. They're 111 for months and months, right? So they're happy about that, but I think that this can be deceptive because of MUM and all the filters that might be added, or all the things that might change, because real search results don't look like what you see in your tools, especially mobile search results don't look like that, and if Google thinks there's a local intent, that's going to mess it up too. So what happens here is BBC's killing it for a while. There's some filters, but not a lot. Sometimes news shows above the BBC website, sometimes not. But 4 days before the World Cup, Google re-understood what the query football means to believe that football and FIFA mean the same thing. And they do not, of course. Kids play football. And so do people in FIFA. Football and FIFA are not the same, but they're very related. And so Google used its topic layer understanding and even its understanding of time and place, right? And was like, hey, anyone in the UK searching for football this week wants the World Cup stuff. Let's show that. And that's great if you're a user. But if you're the BBC or anyone who is ranking on that query, now this isn't real BBC data, I had someone else ranking on this query. If you're any other website and you remember that World Cup listing, it was forever long and really rich with lots of things to click on, lots more filters, videos, matches, lots of stuff to distract you from getting to #1. And even though BBC maintained #1, there's so much stuff in this football knowledge graph to click on that's above that #1 listing that you aren't going to get those clicks. So I want you to think about this as you're moving into the future of SEO. MUM allows Google to temporarily re-understand queries because, of course, you can see it went back. After the end of the World Cup, it went back to regular football knowledge graph, top stories, and then BBC is down below, and eventually, you know, there aren't as many top stories because World Cup's over. But this result is helping Google because they can show the same top knowledge graph to basically everyone in the UK, and those people are going to self-serve and find what they want rather than having to repeat queries. They're just going to filter down and find what they want really easily. Less processing power for Google. Users and Google win. Now let's look at I Want to Go. So at the conference the day before, Greg Gifford, who's an amazing speaker, one of my favorites, told the room that local search uses a local specific algorithm. Now this isn't necessarily news. We've assumed this for a very long time, but that might play out in things like this, where if it knows what device you're searching from, it'll assume that it might assume that you want something different if you're searching from a connected car, if you're searching from a phone that's on Bluetooth in a car, if you're searching from a device that is moving, then they think you probably want something that's more local oriented potentially. And they can put you in that filter. Now, the other thing that's happening is Google has started monetizing things like Google Maps with Google Business Profiles, adding Merchant Center listings into the desktop version and the mobile version, and in Google Shopping, doing the reverse and adding maps if you want to go offline. It seems like Google might be struggling here to figure out how they're going to monetize this, other than taking a cut, like for the organic listings that aren't paying to be there, but it does seem like it's a different algorithm. So next, I want to buy. So in the buy scenario, we've been seeing this a lot, where if someone searches for something like lawnmower, you get the normal filters at the top and then some like visual filters. Like this is important enough that they gave little icons to the filters, and if you scroll through or expand it, you can see there are all of these filters listed here on the right to refine your search. And you can do it by power source, by type, by price, by brand. And so those are things, those are paths that Google knows are quite common. And look, these are occurring like even before the sponsored results. So Google is really, really trying hard. Like they want that data enough that they've put these filters above the paid listings that might make them money. That's interesting. But then look lower on the page, and what you see is, this is what I mean when I say shopping grids. Like number one, most of our SEO tools aren't reporting on this. Number two, how would they if they did? Like, is this one in like position 5, position 4, or like do we do 5.4? Like how do we talk about these grids? And especially true because not all of them have 4, some have 6 or 8. But then they're also trying to include, you know, in a different, same search result, lower down, these popular lawnmowers. They're trying to pre-filter this journey and say, maybe, you know, if you're not finding what you want up there, like, we're kind of getting lost in what you want, but here's some other things that people want. And then they throw in a people also ask, just for good measure. But this is something where they make lots of money, and you can see buy a lawnmower, like they're really working hard to make their money here. And again, it would be hard if you were ranking number 1 in this organically, because who knows when that actually shows up in the search result. Maybe very far down. So if you have products that you're selling online, make sure you're using Merchant Center. They've made it a lot easier to connect your inventory, especially in things like Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, GoDaddy, PrestaShop, and Marketo, and some others, where it directly pulls that in. But there are easy ways to do it with Google Sheets too. Like it's not that hard to get into Merchant Center, and you should be doing it if you're in SEO. Merchant Center used to be just the paid people, but it's not anymore. So you need to be in Merchant Center, and you need to be playing around with it and watching it, caring about how it works, because now it's an organic type of listing, and in fact I believe it's an organic system. So what happens when you have these kinds of listings instead of blue links is they get more clicks, but there are more click options on the page, which is going to decrease your overall click volume. And we do know that Google Analytics and Google Search Console count this as organic, but how do they, we don't know how they're evaluating the position or how it's being notated in any of those things. I think we've heard that Google Analytics calls it direct. No, they call it organic, but they don't show it as coming from a search engine. There's something weird about it. It's not great data right now. But the other thing to know with this one is it's not just one shopping grid per result. Sometimes you get multiple shopping grids, and here's one, deals on lawnmowers, and it's 6 little ones. And then this is in the same result, and then this one you can see it's just side by side. See this green one? Same result. So there's a pack of 4, and then they give it, this one has no heading. They just throw it in there. This one, deals on lawnmowers, has a heading. Right? They're just trying to get as many places in there where they can get you into the product funnel. And also, FYI, these results are full of paid stuff and Google stuff. So the red stuff is actually PPC results, and the yellow stuff is stuff that's not a website, but it is owned by Google. So that includes people also ask, a carousel, a map, deals, stuff like that. And Google has been putting a lot of effort into Merchant Center. They announced Google Merchant Center Next, which uses AI to help you list your products in Merchant Center. That was part of Google I/O, so they care, and they're even letting you use AI. That's probably why they can't say don't use AI, because their tools use AI to help you list your products. So that makes it even easier for you, potentially. But just know that these aren't even driving results. When you click on any of those lawnmowers, you don't necessarily get straight to your landing page, your product page. You're getting to a product knowledge graph, and it's showing your competitors that may or may not have been in that previous result, and their prices and their star ratings and other things. And so it's easy for clicks to not get to your site because they've been hijacked by someone with a better price, or everything stopped at the product knowledge graph, and you would never know about that click in your Search Console or in your Google Analytics. All right, let's talk about I want to know, or I want to do. So I want to do, this is where we talk about device and locations, but also favorites and nodes and your previous search behavior. I think the big thing to understand here, and this does get to voice a little bit, is like, there's a whole vast world out there, and Google never said they just want to index the information on the web. They want to index everything. They want to index the world's information, not just written information, not just crawlable information, everything. And so that includes this personal entity stuff. And it can be, people don't think of voice search as a search, especially SEOs, but that's because they're used to keywords and they're not used to any kind of personal entity indexing. But when you think about it, if I yell at an assistant or a device, turn on the porch lights, that's a huge, heavy search for that device, or for an algorithm who has to, if they don't know who I am, they have to figure out who I am, where are their porch lights in relation to me, and of those porch lights, can it guess at which ones I want to turn on, or does it need to ask me a follow-up question? That it seems like it's a heavy lift, but beyond that, think about a YouTube query, and think about if I say to my assistant, play Rihanna. Or then that, they have to find and know, how do I want to play Rihanna? Do I want to play Rihanna in a video? Do I want to play Rihanna audio only, like in Spotify? Do I want to play a Rihanna interview? Like, there are a lot of potential filters there. But let's think about YouTube and all the consolidation that's been happening there. So Google used to have a separate product called Android Video and Android Music. Those have both been rolled into YouTube and are now part of YouTube TV. And that makes sense because YouTube is a brand from Google that is not Android, and iOS users like YouTube just as much as Android users do. And so rolling things up into YouTube and then using YouTube as a strong participant maybe in the I want to do system makes a whole lot of sense. And if you doubt this, just look at the most recent announcement about Google Podcasts. That's being rolled into YouTube as well now. And so realize, like, podcasts don't all have videos. In fact, originally they did not have videos. And so YouTube, I think, is morphing into our media controls, our I want to do kind of hub, especially when it's media related. And again, remember here that YouTube tries hard to keep you logged in so that it can serve you the next most likely video that you're going to enjoy. And Google is making loads of money on ads in YouTube, especially now. Everyone's cut, most of the world, or a lot of the world, has participated in the cable cutting. Now everything's by subscription or streaming, and so they want you to be logged in, and that's a huge opportunity for Google to monetize. Where money was going to cable TV providers, Google is hoping to get some of that money into YouTube, and they already are getting a lot of it. So they can serve you the right thing based on what you've liked before, what you've searched for in YouTube, what you regularly play, what people who look like you regularly play and like, stuff like that. And that also fits with what Google's been trying to do with Google Analytics, basing it more on cross-device and cross-channel user behavior modeling. They say that this is a benefit for their users, but it may be that once they've anonymized all that data, that modeling is a benefit for them as well, and it's playing out in their ad serving. And they say that there's a separation of church and state, so they don't use ad behavior, ad data to inform search results. But I wonder specifically what that means that they don't use it. Would they use the modeling that they got from it, or anonymized modeling, or would they just say, would they publish the models and say, this is what we've learned about this type of person, and then it's public data, and they're not using they're not using your data, they're using like large pots of anonymized data, and that's not using GA data to inform search. That's just using, large public models. I don't know, there's a lot that could be going on here in the future to watch out for. So let's recap. Google's main limitation is the cost of processing power. Mum is all about context, and it helps with that processing power, sometimes with things like images or voice or non-keyword content, and a lot of the time it happens with filters and journeys, where Google can limit their processing needs by understanding exactly what you're trying to do and not having to start from zero every single time. And beyond that, personalization in the long term should help with that as well. The concept of Micromoments might be a relevant way to think about Google and their systems. This is just a hot take, this is just a guess, but I do think in some way systems probably help Google limit the processing needs of the algorithm. So not everything has to be reevaluated every single time, and they don't have to burn up their data centers on your 15-word query. Traditional SEOs focus mostly on the information part of the Micromoments, but the other ones that are all kind of connected through topic layer, it's not that they're totally separate, but the other systems include offline location stuff, like local SEO, products and purchases like Merchant Center SEO, and then media and personal offline stuff like Google Home Hub and YouTube stuff. And EEAT and YMYL just seem like they're filters to prevent processing and pollution of anything that gets all the way through the processing to an AI processing kind of a state. So to sum it up, I would say that data is nothing without wisdom and understanding that comes from context. Word to your mother. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. To be notified about future videos, click the logo. And to try the MobileMoxie mobile SEO toolset, use the promo code YouTube to get 30 days free. They're mobile-first SEO tools for a mobile-first world.